Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Alright, hello everybody. It's Brendan time. Today, this very day, is the day that the Supreme Court had their little conference to discuss Brendan's case. So, on the 21st of June, 2018. Now, obviously, we would all like to know what happened, because this is now evening on June 21st. So, but the problem is we gotta wait. We have to wait till Monday. So, unfortunately, we have to kind of sit and wonder. But, hey, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Brendan's case. We're going to talk about something that I was talking about with, Georgina Stulenbos, who's a very, very passionate supporter over in Holland. Some of you may have seen the conversation I had with her here on my channel. And when I was talking to her and we were talking about AEDPA and things and how difficult it is to overcome AEDPA, it's a very, very high threshold. And I think when it comes to minors, that it's failing to keep the state courts honest. What I mean by that, and this is part of why I think Brendan's habeas petition going to the Supreme Court is so huge and so important. The state courts need to be kept honest. Well, but what's there to keep them honest right now? If a district court in a state makes a decision and it goes to, and the person appeals it, 98% of the time, the appeals court is just gonna be like, yeah, no, it was all right, it's fine. And how much do they really look into these confessions? You have to ask yourself. So what I'm saying is that usually the district court will make a decision about something, whether they fairly considered special circumstances or not, and it'll go up to the appeals court, and they'll just sign off on it as well. So what's there to keep the state courts honest? To make them pay attention when it comes to juveniles and recognize that the Supreme Court of the United States has said many times already in the past that juveniles require special care. The full read technique on a juvenile is not going to be a reliable confession. It's there's so many juveniles at a young age that when the full read technique is used on them, a great many of them will falsely confess. I mean, that's just the way. That's just the facts and figures when they come in with juveniles about in terms of using the full read technique on a juvenile as was used on Brendan. So when we have this clear law and everything, how did this happen to Brendan? And beyond that, how is it happening to other Brendans, other juveniles out there in the United States and in various parts of the system? What's there to help them? What's there to keep the state courts honest and duly weigh their special circumstances? Pretty much right now, nothing. Because I'll tell you what, Luke Berg walked up in to every single one of those appeals. Obviously, Judge Duffin overturned Brendan's confession. The state appealed it. A 3-judge panel heard it, and again, for the first time we see, or that I saw Luke Berg, he basically walks in there, very little substance to his argument, and basically saying AEDPA, and like dropping the mic almost. I mean, it's like that's what he did. He was constantly reminding the judges that it was AEDPA, and really his arguments were weak and not very convincing. I mean, what he was saying, to give you an example of what I mean by that, he uses the fact that Brendan said that they cut her hair, and Brendan said that they stabbed her, and Brendan said that they raped her, and these things all prove that the confession is voluntary, right? Wait a second. You can't prove a single one of those things. You have no actual evidence that proves any one of those things happened. Not any piece of evidence to prove, nothing that proves any of those. How is that a good argument? When you don't have a single thing to back up those things that he says make Brendan's confession voluntary and not coerced. Right? And so he offers stuff like that, and AEDPA, mic drop. That's how it gets argued. There's they don't argue at all. Basically, mostly. Right? So then we get to the on-bank review, and it's more of the same. It's more of the same from Luke Berg and from the state of Wisconsin. Basically, AEDPA, mic drop. Constantly reminding about AEDPA, and like the judges need to be reminded of it. But obviously the judges that agreed with him were probably like, didn't mind it. But obviously the judges that disagreed with him probably took offense to his, telling them how their job is done, basically, right? So, and that's like the extent of the argument. There's really not a whole lot of substance to the argument that the state offers. It's mostly just leaning heavily on AEDPA. So, in my mind, what Brendan's case could do for the country is the Supreme Court could deem Brendan Dassey's case, that his confession was involuntary, overturn his conviction, and then people like Brendan Dassey coming through the system later, trying to get over AEDPA, can point to his case. There will be other people who have similar, the similar mindsets and everything like Brendan. There's many out there. Devontae Sanford jumps to mind, who was recently exonerated. But there are other kids out there who were, at a young age, weren't exactly mentally with it, or at least hadn't developed yet, So they were malleable. And this happens. And there will be other kids who will then be able to point to Brendan Dassey's case when under AEDPA and say, yes, there's clearly established Supreme Court law on a habeas case that you have to show special care, blah, 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 whatever it ends up being, right? That's why Brendan's case, even though it's habeas, even though you hear people tell you it's not an important case, it doesn't affect enough law, I believe that it will be hugely effective in helping the youth in our criminal justice system, particularly those who are very young and those who are of limited mental ability. Those in particular will then be able to at least point to Brendan Dassey's case to overcome AEDPA. And we can finally have a way of starting to keep these state courts honest and give the special care that they're supposed to give. Because they clearly did not with Brendan. It is extremely obvious that they did not give special care with Brendan. His own lawyer brought in an investigator to coerce him, and I mean, on and on and on. I asked somebody today this question about when we were talking about Brendan and everything, and this person was basically telling me the control question doesn't mean anything, which we're going to be talking about here, by the way, in a few minutes. But this person said to me, "Oh, it's not that. It doesn't really mean anything. It's not important, kind of thing or whatever." And I'm like, really? Seriously, how big does the mountain of straws need to be before the camel's back breaks? Seriously, how big does that straw mountain need to be? I'm wondering at this point. But so that's where we're at, right? So, anyways, I was having that conversation today, and I was just going, "Oh, brother." It's like, how much does it take? This whole thing is a train wreck. He was, poorly handled at almost every turn. Anyways. So, it's amazing that it's taken this much to go all the way to the Supreme Court. But at least this, because it got pushed all this way, it will give future kids like Brendan with, who are, juvenile and having mental limitations, they will have a piece of case law to point to help them overcome AEDPA. And I think that will help. I think that will help a lot. And, the Supreme Court may, in the next year or so, decide to bring on a couple more habeas cases involving juveniles to expand it to where certain other juveniles, besides just the juvenile mentally limited, will be able to have a case to point to overcome AEDPA. So that's, I think, probably what should happen and needs to happen, but we'll have to obviously wait till Monday. So now to get on to with what I was saying before. Y'all know how I feel about the control question. Sorry, I'm not wearing the shirt. It actually happens to be in the wash right now, so I actually couldn't wear it. So I went with the black shirt. So anyway, so what I want to talk about now is this just sheer ridiculousness of what happens with the control question. Now, some people tell me, like, they ask me, what do you make such a big deal out of the control question for? How come you're so fixated on the control question? If you watched a few more of my videos, you would know Tom Fassbender went on Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz talking about how Brendan and his answer to the control question proves that his confession isn't coerced, right? He said this on both shows and played like some clip, but he cut it off before the part where he asks Brendan if he disagrees with him. They cut it off. They just show the part where Brendan goes that he doesn't remember the tattoo, and then that was it. Later, when I went looking for that part, I found the bit that comes after. The bit where he says, do you disagree with me when I say that? And Brendan goes, no, I just don't know what it was. Right? So once I found that part, and I go, okay, wait a second. He just flip-flopped. He totally just showed right now that because Tom Fassbender said, do you disagree with me when I say that? Brendan's wheels immediately went, oh God, they're going to tell me I'm not being honest. You know, like all the things that they had been doing to him pretty much that day already. It was all because he just figured that was what was coming next. He didn't realize it was a control question. Brendan didn't realize that, of course. So he was reacting to it the same way he reacts to every other question they ask, where if he guesses wrong, or if they start to ask a question like, do you disagree with me, or start asking like questions like that, or asking second and third questions about something, like he's mentally been conditioned that day to realize, oh my God, they want me to say something in particular. Like that's obvious, right? So there's another thing here though. Brendan makes no mention of Teresa's belly button piercing. Okay, and you would think, this being a control question, right, that if Brendan remembered any kind of, because he actually at first asked about piercings, scars, various things that he asked about. Brendan just like the last thing that Tom Fassbender said was tattoo. So Brendan like said, oh no, I don't remember any tattoos, right? So like he just, or that's it, right? He keyed in on the tattoo thing, right? That of all the things that Fassbender said, he just keyed in on the last thing he said, right? Then Tom Fassbender comes back with, well, we know she had a tattoo on her stomach. Okay. If so, and Brendan ended up, he says, do you remember that? Or do you remember that? And Brendan says, Now, if Brendan remembered anything about a piercing, he didn't want to guess, right? I mean, the kid's been backed into so many corners. They want him to say what they want, but they don't want him to say what they don't want, and like they've been just manipulating him the whole time, and he is floundering. Unfortunately that's what's happening. He's just floundering. He doesn't know what they want. He doesn't know how to guess right. So he wasn't about to guess about there being scars or piercings, because he didn't know. He wasn't there. He never saw her. He didn't have the information they needed. So he certainly wasn't going to guess that she had piercings and scars. So, you see what I mean? It kind of shows, what the control question shows is just exactly how much Brendan didn't know, how much he was reacting to these investigators, and how he was just putty in their hands. That's what it shows. I don't know how the on-bank majority failed to see this. I'm going to assume that it was an honest mistake. But they totally misrepresented the control question themselves in their decision. In the en banc review, the majority basically. In their decision, they basically said that conversation where Brendan flip-flops and basically agrees to her having a tattoo that didn't exist, Tom Fassbender made up. Never mentions the actual belly button piercing that Teresa has. And so anyways, the en banc review chose to say that was Brendan resisting, agreeing to a fake fact. So I'm going to show you the en banc. I'm going to show you that section about the control question from the majority's decision, of the en banc review majority's decision right now, and then we'll come on back. So one more time, this is the majority decision. Signaling that the investigators did not overwhelm his will, Dassey resisted repeated suggestions by both investigators that he and Avery had used wires and cables hanging in the garage to torture Teresa. The investigators also tested Dassey's suggestibility. They told him falsely that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach and asked if he had seen it. Here is the exchange. Fassbender, did she have any scars, marks, tattoos, stuff like that you can remember? Brendan, I don't remember any tattoos. Fassbender, okay. We know that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach. Do you remember that? Brendan shakes his head no and says which is resisting, which is what they wanted. Then Fassbender says, do you disagree with me when I say that? And then Brendan says, no, I just don't know where it is. And Fassbender says, okay. When he says no, I don't know where it is, he is basically agreeing with Fassbender that Teresa had a tattoo on her belly. Okay, so as established, Brendan doesn't mention the actual belly button piercing that was there. Agrees to a tattoo that wasn't there, that it was there. So that's where we're at there. But some of you may be saying, I don't know, maybe some of you don't know, but some of you may be asking, well, wait. How do you know that Teresa had a piercing, a belly button piercing? Here, let me show you.
Get as much information for us as you can. Do you know about any piercings, ears pierced or anything like that?
I think her belly button is pierced. And her ears are good.
Okay. Pierced belly button and ears. Okay. Well, our officers are all out in the accident right now.
Yeah.
Are you going to be home all night?
Yes.
Okay, so there you have the words of Teresa's mother telling you that she had a belly button piercing. So, alright, so moving on. Now, we're going to go ahead and look at the actual footage of Brendan talking to Tom Fassbender with the control question.
We know that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach. Do you remember that? Do you disagree with me when I say that?
No, but I don't know what it was.
So there we see a typical exchange with Brendan and the investigators. They ask him a question, he answers one way. They probe with a different question. Do you disagree with me when I say that? And he flip-flops. It's textbook Brendan Dassey confession. It's textbook, I mean, it happens all throughout, but I point to this because Tom Fassbender points to this. In the present day, Tom Fassbender points to this control question as the, you know, the big show of proof that Brendan Dassey is guilty and he wasn't coerced. It doesn't prove that at all. It proves exactly the opposite of that. And so that's why, for those of you who wonder why I talk about the control question so much, that's why. Because one of the main players in the case still points to it to this day as the proof. So, it's proof of something. It certainly is proof of something, but not not what Tom Fassbender and the on-bank majority think it's proof of. And I wonder about the on-bank majority here. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe they just have a huge caseload and somehow read that fast, or heard about it and just wishful thinking, just kind of didn't think about it when they read the exchange. I don't know. I'm hoping it was just somehow innocently missed. But it concerns me greatly that these 4 judges who voted to say that this confession was voluntary, it concerns me that if they really don't understand the mechanics of the English language well enough to realize what happened there. So, yeah. Anyways, so that's all. Had to get on that and wanted to talk about, like I said, how important I think Brendan's case is for all juveniles, particularly those with mental limitations, moving forward to keep these state courts honest, and to actually now press them to actually give the special care, because now they can actually fear some of these, accused, or some of these kids that are getting convicted can now file for habeas relief and possibly point to Brendan's case as clearly established Supreme Court law to help them overcome AEDPA. I think that's huge. I think that could affect a great deal of law, and more importantly, how law and courts conduct themselves. I think it will, like I said, make them honest, get them back to being honest and doing it right and doing what they're supposed to. And so that's what I had to say, folks, about today. I just wanted to talk more about the control question, and like I said, about how huge I think Brendan's case is, and I hope that SCOTUS agrees with me. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.